Boys and girls.
Hello, Frank Zappa, and welcome to the National Swedish Radio from Stockholm.
Thank you so much.
Then, I would really like to say from the Swedish radio and all your fans in Sweden and Scandinavia, happy birthday.
Thank you very much. I'm glad I made it this far.
Frank, first question is easy. How does it feel to be 50 years old?
Well, I'll know more about that in a couple of hours. But to be almost 50 years old, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
How have you managed to reach this far?
I think that if you're talking about advice for health and diet and so forth, you're not going to get it from me because I'll eat just about anything, and smoke about a pack and a half of cigarettes a day, and drink a lot of strong coffee. But other than that, I don't use any drugs or alcohol, so maybe that's how you get to be 50 years old.
I thought more about your continuous struggle against a big society in America.
Well, I don't know whether struggling against American society will guarantee that you get to be 50. I mean, there have been other people that have struggled against the U.S. government in this country and have wound up being disappeared.
Concerning your old statement about plastic people, do we still need to freak out to become real human beings?
Well, I don't know whether the word freak out is the proper one to use, but I'll guarantee you that there are plastic people everywhere. And I wouldn't say it was just George Bush or just Dan Quayle or just James Baker III or Dick Cheney or any of those other characters. I mean, just about every government you can find has certain plastic person representatives tucked away in it. I think that what is being lost during this tail end of the 20th century is the will on the part of especially the average American to be an individual. Their people seem to be too willing to just conform and be molded into some bland, obedient nothingness. And I think that it's always better for an individual's mental health and for the society at large to have more individualism expressed. That doesn't mean that the individualism has to lead to a lack of cooperation. Individuals can cooperate, but I advise for a happy and healthy life that you try and maintain your individuality, because each person has worth as a human being. And when you submerge that in order to just get along or to be an obedient member of some political party or organization, you lose something, and ultimately it's going to have negative effects. It's more difficult to be an individual today in the United States because the laws are changing, the social pressures are changing. The types of retaliation that can be brought against a person who wishes to be an individual are more prevalent today. You know, the economic risks that you take if you open your mouth and speak out about certain things. Most people won't take that risk because they want the security that comes with keeping your mouth shut.
Has it become worse now than in the 60s?
Yes, it is much worse in the U.S. for freedom of speech. It's almost getting to the point where it's a charade for this country to brag to other nations how free it is and how democratic it is. But internally, if you understand what's going on here, you will see that the extreme right-wing element of U.S. government is clamping down on all possible means of free speech. It's not just the speech itself, but they are controlling the means by which you can speak, by placing labels on records, by making even more restrictions on films, by having restrictions on radio and television broadcasting. Even if you want to have free speech, so-called, the places where you may be allowed to have it are being limited more and more. And I think that it's rather hypocritical of this government to be speaking to other nations, making foreign policy statements about how wonderful democracy is and so on and so forth, when it is eroding day by day in this country through legal actions taken by the Supreme Court and by legislators. For example, the movie industry has just woken up to discover that today there are 350 different pieces of legislation in 46 states that have been proposed to set up regional censorship boards for film. And if this succeeds, it will no longer be possible to release a major Hollywood film, make 2,500 prints, and send it all over the country, because it will be possible for religious groups and other special interest groups to keep certain types of films out of that locality. And of course, once these censorship boards are set up for films, you know that they are going to be looking at books and records. So, little by little, America is being turned into a police state, not by having tanks in the streets, but by having ignorant legislators sitting in the government.
Can you understand the reason for that?
Well, one thing that will guarantee that such a process can take place in anyone's country is when there is apathy among the voters. You know, I'm sure it's no secret to people outside the U.S. that although we have democracy here, the willingness to go out and vote has almost vanished. It's very hard to get Americans to go out and vote about something. The voter turnout in this country is embarrassingly low. In fact, one of the worst statistics, I'll tell you, is if you'll remember President Reagan, when he came to power, he bragged that he had this major mandate from the American people to move forward with his idiotic programs. Now, here's what his mandate consisted of. 15% of the eligible voters in America went to the polls, and 90% of the 15% voted for him.
You've been pretty sharp in your critics of the American society through the years, but Americans I've spoken to have told me that you're just considered a weird guy and nobody really pays any attention to you.
Well, that's true. Nobody cares about anything here. So that shouldn't surprise you. I mean, if they cared, they would be out voting, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
So the person that you talk to he's telling you the truth. They don't care about me here. I'm virtually unknown in my own country. And the reason for it is that if I'm in the music business and I make a single, like the biggest single in CBS's history in Scandinavia was Bobby Brown Goes Down. This was a surprise to everybody. That record has never been played on the air in America. Never.
How is it today with your problems with that? Do they play your albums at all on the American radio stations?
Well, tomorrow they will, because it's my 50th birthday.
Yeah.
And some stations will play some songs. But basically, unless you are willing to pay bribery to American broadcasters, they will not play your songs. It is impossible to have a hit record in America unless you pay off.
But when we're talking about your ability to be heard in America, for example, an album like Broadway the Hard Way, how many albums are sold in the U.S.?
Not many. I don't know what the figure was, but certainly not many.
But could you give us a figure? Is it 100,000, 500,000, or just 10,000?
It would probably be under 100,000.
What happened to your TV show, Night School?
Well, there's no way that show will ever go on television in the U.S. It's not going to happen. I mean, at the time that I proposed it, perhaps I was naive to even suggest it to them, but if there's one thing that is clear, anybody who's come to this country and tried to watch the news, you'll find that it's hard to know what's really going on in the world because of the nature of what is broadcast, what they call news here. It's empty. And so there's a reason for that. I think that it's a U.S. government policy to manage the news. it's one of those things you find out about later. So let's say you're me, and you go to a broadcaster and you say you want to do a show like Night School that brings the true news to the public. Do you think you're going to get anywhere with that project? No way.
You're dealing a lot with political stuff, and you're concerned about society. You're making music, films, try to do TV shows, and so forth. How much do you work?
A lot.
And that means... When do you sleep?
Well, every chance I get. You know, I try and get 8 hours sleep per night. But see, since I don't have to travel to do my work, you know, that means if I sleep 8 hours, that leaves 16 other hours of nonstop work, which I can do. All I have to do is get out of my bed and walk downstairs, and I'm at work.
Frank, we would really like to know what you're working on for the moment.
What I have to do now is put the finishing touches on an album called Make a Jazz Noise Here, which is supposed to come out in February. And I'm also working on another album called Phase 3, which will be coming out either end of February or March.
Mm-hmm.
Are there albums with musicians, or is it all on Synclavier this time?
Make a Jazz Noise Here and this other album called The Best Band You Never Heard in Your Life. Both of those use live musicians. It's material that was recorded during the 1988 tour.
I read something in a Swedish newspaper about the tour in Japan.
Well, how did it get there already? I haven't even made the deal yet. I'm waiting for a fax from this company to tell me what the progress is on our negotiations. But since it's already been published in the newspaper there, what I have proposed is that they come up with sponsorship money which would allow me to put together a 20-piece band with musicians from all over the world, which would then give 5 concerts in Tokyo in the fall.
Just a few years ago, the album Does Humor Belong in Music ended with the Whipping Post as the last song of the last tour, the last concert. But still you went out 88.
Yeah, well, I made a big mistake in doing that because the 1988 tour cost me $400,000.
But what was the reason of touring again?
Well, one of the things that we did in the United States in '88 was voter registration during the tour, and all the material that we were performing in the U.S. during the 2 months of the U.S. portion of the tour was very politically oriented. And I thought it was an important election, and the only way to really get that message out, since they wouldn't play my songs on the radio, was go out and play it live. And so I did it.
On that album, Broadway the Hard Way, there is one song called Promiscuous. Do you can tell the background to that song?
Well, at the time, we had this guy named Everett Koop, who was the Surgeon General of the United States, and you know, he was one of these people who was telling the U.S. public that the AIDS epidemic started because a native in East Africa was skinning a green monkey, and maybe he cut his finger while he was taking the skin off of this monkey to eat it, and the green monkey had the AIDS virus, and that's how it was transmitted to the human population. And somehow this native who cut his finger skinning the green monkey managed to transmit this to 700 people who died all at the same time in New York in November. I mean, it just doesn't make sense, okay? There's never been a situation other than Legionnaire's disease where a large number of people die all at the same time in a certain location where it doesn't raise the question of biological warfare. And the United States government has in the past conducted biological warfare experiments on civilian populations.
In your book you write about a very funny story when you played in Stockholm in 1971, I think it was. And two Swedish fans came up to you when you were on your way out from the concert hall. Do you think you can tell that story in your own words for the Swedish radio listeners?
Yeah, we were supposed to play 2 shows at the Concerthuset, and we were taking a break between the shows, and some fans came up to me as I was walking outside and said that their younger brother, Hannes, had been to the first show, and he had to go home, and they were going to stay for the second show. And what they wanted me to do was come with them after the second show to their house in Tullinge and walk into Hannes's bedroom. He would be sleeping. They wanted me to walk in and say, Hannes, Hannes, wake up, it's me, Frank Zappa. And I thought it was so absurd that I said I would do it. So after the show, I took the drive out to Tullinge and walked into his little room. There he was, sleeping in the bed, and I said exactly that. Hannes, Hannes, wake up, it's me, Frank Zappa. And the mother and father woke up, and we sat around till about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. We had coffee and cookies and talked about politics. And then I went back to the hotel and did my traveled the next day.
In the book, you don't mention how Hannes reacted.
Well, he was surprised. Yes, I think enormously surprised, but I didn't want to exaggerate. So if he's out there listening, Hannes, Hannes, wake up, it's me, Frank Zappa.
Frank, let's talk about your music for a while.
Okay.
In your book, you write that the concept of the rock guitar solo in the 80s has pretty much been reduced to wheelie, wheelie, wee, make a face.
That's right.
Is that the reason why you have released altogether 5 LPs with your guitar solos?
The reason for the guitar LPs is because there's a certain segment of the listening public that likes that, likes the way I play the guitar, and those people wouldn't necessarily be interested in my orchestra music or even some of the funny lyrics, but they do like the guitar playing. So that's an accommodation for one spectrum of my listening public. Whereas some of the people who like the orchestra albums or even the synclavier stuff wouldn't be interested in the guitar or the vocals.
When you write music, do you use an instrument, a guitar, a computer, or you just write it down on paper from your head?
I do it all those different ways. I mean, some of the tunes that have gone on album were things that I wrote while sitting in an airport, just waiting to catch a plane. Like Alien Orifice, for example, is one of those tunes.
In your book, you mean that anything can be music, just a question of putting a frame around it. And you
That's
think,
right.
Yeah, and you think that most people can't deal with that. They just want a good beat, something they can dance to. It has to go boom bap, boom boom bap, and so on. And I would like to ask you if it's not more a question of a difference between body music and mind music. I mean, body music is this, boom bap, but I mean, mind music speaks to you in another way.
Well, you could make that distinction, but I would say that in a general context, what I say is true about you could say that anything is music and consume it with your mind or your body, depending on your orientation. For example, there are certain types of dance music that you might encounter in Eastern Europe that people definitely move their body to, but it's certainly not located on a boom bap beat. It might be in 7 or 9 or some other time signature.
But as I understand it, in your book, you mean that Americans are not so used to other music than this ordinary dance music.
Well, they haven't heard it. They have no experience. If you haven't heard it, how do you know what your mind will do with it? See, the problem is that broadcasting is incredibly limited here. There's not going to be widespread access for the listening public to anything other than hit records, and all hit records go boom boom bap.
But there must be some sort of free broadcasting stations dealing with other material than boom boom bap.
Yes, there are. They're very few and very far between, and the government has limited them to transmitters with low power. And furthermore, since they're not playing hit records, it's hard for them to survive economically because sponsors don't buy broadcasting time on those outlets. So those are supported by donation, and the donations aren't very large. So those independent stations are always poor. They're always being threatened with legal action by religious organizations who want to take cases to the Supreme Court and try and put these operations out of business.
But when you say all this about American society, I sometimes wonder why you still live there.
Well, because I'm an American, and I think that this country has a lot of potential if it can only straighten itself out.
Frank, if you look back on your career, what album and which group during the years do you consider as your personal favorite?
Well, I couldn't even hazard a guess at that. I wouldn't want to say that.
Your favorite drummer?
Well, I can say I think my favorite drummer was Vinny Colaiuta.
Thank you.
What do you think of the old original Mothers if you compare it with the more modern sound you have today?
Well, I'd rather listen to the more modern sound, that's for sure, but you know, I think that's a matter of taste. There are some people who prefer that early group, and that's their choice.
I have to ask you, when your book came, I know that thousands of fans ran to the bookshop, bought it, just to get an answer of the eternal question about Frank Zappa. And that one question you never answer in the book, and that is...
What's that?
How do you really do your music? How is the process? What do you do?
Well, the process is different for each different type of thing that I do. What I would have to go through in order to teach a song like Jesus Thinks You're a Jerk to a 12-piece band is vastly different than what I would have to do to create a song on the synclavier like Jazz from Hell. These are two completely different things.
But do you hear the music inside you, or do you work mathematically, or can you describe it?
I can do it both ways. It depends on what it is that you're writing. You know, I can hear things as a completely finished piece of music and then just go through the drudgery of trying to reconstruct this finished image in my head and turn it into something other people can listen to, or I can start off with a small idea and then develop it in conjunction with live musicians, which is what happened with Jesus Thinks You're a Jerk. It was written piece by piece. I started off with a completely written lyrics, and then in fact, there's complete video coverage of this process taking place at rehearsal, where it starts on the very first day, where you come up with just a few notes for the tune, and then each section of the lyrics, you develop a setting to support the lyrics. And to create the finished piece of Jesus Thinks You're a Jerk took about a week. And after the structure is in place, then what you have to do is rehearse it over and over again until it's comfortable to play it. So there are different kinds of processes you would go through to put things together, whereas it's all about numbers.
But what do you really think you can achieve by your work?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know what anybody can achieve by any kind of work that they do. I kind of do what I do because I know how to do it, and I like to do it, and I just keep doing it. Whether or not I achieve anything, that's not why I do it. I don't do it to achieve.
You don't do it to change way of thinking in the American society?
I have a pretty realistic outlook on how effective anyone could be in changing the minds of the American people based on the fact that you can't speak to the American people. Just like that guy told you. I'm regarded in this country as a weird guy that nobody cares about. So, you know, what can I achieve? Nothing.
What about your connections with Václav Havel? Why did you choose to visit him?
Well, the thing about what he's trying to do in Czechoslovakia that I approve of is, in fact, his quote on this videotape that I made while I was there. He says, "We are all people from art and from culture, and we must make the policy better than the politicians." And if he could succeed at that, and since if you look at what normal politicians have done in every other country, I don't think that it's been particularly good. If there's any way to improve on the way that policy is created and administered, whether it's being done by a painter, a playwright, a ballet dancer or a mechanic, whatever it is, we could stand some improvement in the invention of policy.